It began like any other quiet morning in Cypress Hollow, a place where the hum of sprinklers and distant leaf blowers usually set the rhythm of the day. But beneath the calm exterior, paranoia had been brewing for months. Paranoia cultivated by one woman who had elevated neighborhood micromanagement into a full-fledged personal crusade. Teresa Blanchard, the self-appointed guardian of community purity, had been inching toward a breaking point long before the red laser dots danced across Gavin and Anna's kitchen wall. Her obsession with enforcing the rules had grown from petty complaints about Tulip Heights to a deranged conviction that she alone safeguarded Cypress Hollow from unseen threats. What neither Gavin nor Anna realized was how far Teresa had spiraled into her own fantasy of authority. Each ignored warning note, each polite refusal from Anna, each display of quiet confidence from a woman Teresa neither understood nor controlled, all of it built a narrative in her head. To her, Anna wasn't a resident. She was a suspicious outsider, a threat, a puzzle Teresa needed to solve, even if she had to manufacture the clues herself. By the time she physically blocked Anna on the sidewalk and demanded ID like a border agent at an international checkpoint, she was already living in a world detached from reality. The moment Anna calmly refused, Teresa's fears ignited like dry brush in August heat. So she placed a 911 call dripping with panic, embellishment, and outright lies, describing Anna as an armed foreign national with military training who refused to comply. The dispatchers, trained to prioritize potential threats, didn't hear the petty grudges of an unhinged HOA president. They heard danger. They sent patrol cars, then backup, then SWAT. The absurdity of it all became lethal when officers rolled into the cul-de-sac with full tactical gear, rifles drawn, drones buzzing overhead. A gated community built on promises of tranquility turned into the set of a counter-terrorism operation. And in the middle of it all stood Gavin, bewildered, half-dressed, blinking into the sunlight with lasers tracking across his home interior like a crime thriller gone wrong. To him, this was the terrifying peak of an HOA feud that had spiraled out of anyone's control. To the officers, this was a high-threat scenario. To Teresa, it was validation, a chance to prove she was right all along. And then, in a single, stunned moment, the illusion shattered. The SWAT team recognized Anna, not as a threat, but as Echo Spectre, a classified operator whose name commanded immediate respect. Weapons lowered, orders reversed. The tactical standoff evaporated as quickly as it had materialized, leaving Teresa exposed as the true danger in the neighborhood. What had begun with rule-checking, clipboard-wielding lectures, and petty grievances had escalated into a militarized response sparked entirely by one woman's paranoia. The real threat to Cypress Hollow wasn't an unregistered resident. It was the resident who believed she had the authority to wage psychological warfare and call in literal reinforcements. In the end, the tactical standoff didn't reveal a security breach. It revealed how far one person could fall when given a clipboard, a position title, and no real limits. From the moment Anna Holbrook stepped into Cypress Hollow, Teresa Blanchard felt something she could never fully name. An unsettling mix of intimidation and resentment wrapped in suburban insecurity. Anna carried herself with quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. There was no bragging, no posturing, no attempt to impress the neighbors. She simply existed with a calm, razor-sharp composure, born from years in military intelligence. To Teresa, that calm felt like defiance. It pricked at her ego. It whispered that she wasn't really in control of the neighborhood she ruled like a condo-sized empire. Teresa had long cultivated her identity as the community watchdog. She patrolled the sidewalks with her clipboard like a sheriff in athleisure, taking notes on garage door colors, mailbox angles, grass length, and the precise time each resident retrieved their bins. Most people avoided conflict by humoring her, nodding politely or pretending to not be home. But Anna was different. She wasn't rude. She wasn't confrontational. She simply refused to engage in the petty rituals of obedience Teresa demanded. And for someone who thrived on control, that quiet refusal became an unforgivable threat. Anna's silence only deepened the mystery around her. She didn't gossip, didn't complain, didn't seek validation. She jogged at dawn, fixed things around the house with surgical efficiency, and smiled politely at neighbors. To everyone else, she was simply a reserved ex-military woman enjoying civilian life with her husband. But to Teresa, the lack of information felt suspicious. She craved data points, patterns, explanations. When she couldn't find any gaps in Anna's behavior, she invented them. Her surveillance began small. Photos of Anna jogging, timestamps of when she left the house, questions slipped to neighbors about where she worked and why she didn't attend HOA meetings. When Mrs. Potterson hesitated, Teresa leaned harder, pressuring her like a detective squeezing a witness. Every refusal from Anna was rewritten in Teresa's mind as proof of guilt. Every routine activity, yoga, running errands, sitting on the porch, became part of an invisible conspiracy that only Teresa believed existed. Meanwhile, Anna, with her combat deployments and classified missions, saw right through Teresa's behavior. She recognized the posture of someone who wanted authority without responsibility, someone who mistook fear for respect. Yet she never escalated. She played it cool, almost amused, handling Teresa's antics with more patience than anyone expected from someone who once interrogated war criminals. But quiet patience has limits, and Teresa pressed on, convinced she was outmaneuvering a threat when she was really provoking someone vastly out of her league. Their conflict wasn't loud. It wasn't filled with shouting matches or dramatic confrontations. It was psychological, subtle. A clash between obsessive vigilance and disciplined restraint, between a woman who built power through imagined threats and a woman who had confronted real ones. By the time Teresa called 911 and triggered a SWAT response, the contrast between them became undeniable. One was fueled by insecurity, fantasy, and delusion. The other by training, strength, and lived experience. The day law enforcement recognized Anna as Echo Spectre, Teresa's entire identity shattered. The suburban watchdog learned far too late that she had picked a fight with a soldier who didn't need to raise her voice to win. It began with a flimsy square of yellow paper, one of those cheap, sticky notes sold in bulk packs that curl at the edges if the air is too humid. Most people use them to jot down grocery lists or reminders about dentist appointments. But in Cypress Hollow, under the self-appointed rule of Teresa Blanchard, a post-it note could be as serious as an official decree. And on that quiet morning, when Gavin opened the front door to find the neon square trembling in the breeze, he didn't yet understand that this single scrap of paper was the first shot fired in what would become a full-scale neighborhood war. The message was blunt, written in blocky, aggressive handwriting. Guests must register at the gate, no exceptions. A simple command, but the implication behind it was loaded. It wasn't a reminder. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration. Teresa asserting her authority like a border guard stamping passports. But the most absurd part? Anna wasn't a guest. She lived there. 8 months of mortgage payments, a name on the mailbox, years of marital paperwork, and a closet full of clothes in the primary bedroom all confirmed her residency. Yet none of that mattered to Teresa, because she had decided Anna didn't fit her idea of a compliant homeowner. Gavin remembered staring at the note, baffled, wondering if it had been left on the wrong door. Meanwhile, the neighborhood seemed blissfully indifferent. The scent of fresh mulch hung in the air. A neighbor's sprinkler hissed to life, spraying a rainbow mist over the lawn. Birds perched on the power lines as if they were watching the beginning of a play they'd seen too many times before. Cypress Hollow had seen Teresa's crusades before. Minor skirmishes over mailbox paint chips, disputes about holiday decorations being one day late. citations over trash cans left out a little too long. But none of those conflicts had ever collided with someone like Anna. The post-it was more than a note. It was Teresa's way of marking territory, a ritualistic warning shot, a dare. It suggested Anna's presence needed permission, verification, and scrutiny, and that is where the fuse caught fire. Anna, who had navigated actual war zones with more grace than most people navigate grocery store aisles, simply raised her eyebrow and tossed the note into the recycling bin. She didn't treat it like a threat. She treated it like paper. That simple gesture, calm dismissal, was gasoline poured on Teresa's simmering paranoia. She expected fear, compliance, an explanation. Instead, she got indifference. And indifference is a powerful insult to someone who thrives on control. That single note led to clipboard inspections, unauthorized surveillance, bogus citations, and escalating hostilities. It pushed neighbors into the uncomfortable position of choosing sides, whispering behind blinds as Teresa marched up and down the street looking for more ammunition. It set the stage for cameras hidden in trees, late-night stalking, and eventually a militarized police response that turned an ordinary cul-de-sac into a tactical nightmare. But everything, every drone, every officer, every accusation, every unraveling piece of Teresa's facade could be traced back to that first little square of yellow paper, a post-it note that should have reminded someone to buy milk, but instead became the spark that ignited the most ridiculous suburban war Cypress Hollow had ever seen. The morning the cul-de-sac transformed into a full-blown tactical battleground started like any other. Sunlight filtering gently through blinds, the hum of air conditioning, the quiet shuffle of neighbors taking out dogs or sipping coffee on porches. Cypress Hollow was engineered for peace. Gated entrances, manicured lawns, HOA bylaws thicker than some college textbooks, and a security system specifically designed to keep chaos at bay. But all it took was one frantic phone call, one embellished, paranoid, utterly fabricated 911 report from Teresa Blanchard to shatter that illusion and unleash a response fit for an international crisis instead of a suburban jogger in bright pink running shorts. The 911 dispatchers weren't equipped to detect the difference between a genuine emergency and a delusional woman drunk on HOA authority. Teresa's trembling voice painted a picture of a highly trained militant operative roaming Cypress Hollow, refusing to identify herself, potentially armed, hostile, and moving unpredictably. Her words dripped with fear she manufactured entirely in her own mind. And when she invoked the magic phrases, armed, military-trained, dangerous, the die was cast. Within minutes, patrol cars were dispatched. Within 10, SWAT was mobilized. The call had escalated from suspicious activity to a potential domestic terror threat without a single shred of real evidence. The peace of the cul-de-sac evaporated. Engines roared at the community gates. Security guards scrambled as multiple black SUVs and tactical vans barreled in. Neighbors peered from behind curtains, mouths open, coffee cups trembling in their hands. One man dropped his gardening gloves. Another stumbled onto his porch still wearing pajamas and holding a half-eaten waffle. Nobody had ever seen such a scene in Cypress Hollow, a place where the biggest disruption was usually a kid riding a scooter too fast. Drones hovered overhead, their electric buzz slicing through the morning calm. Officers in tactical gear fanned out with precision, communicating in clipped signals, sweeping the sidewalks and driveways like they were clearing a battlefield rather than a row of identical suburban homes decorated with seasonal wreaths. Snipers positioned themselves strategically, their scopes trained on the figure they were told was a violent infiltrator, Anna, casually cooling down after her jog, ponytail swaying, breathing steady, water bottle in hand. Meanwhile, Gavin stood on his doorstep in gym shorts and Crocs,
the unlikeliest man ever to face down rifles pointed at his living room. The red laser dots jittering across his wall felt surreal, like a scene stolen from an action movie where he was accidentally cast as an extra. He tried explaining, voice cracking, hands raised, that this was all a misunderstanding, that his wife lived here, that she wasn't a threat. But procedure trumped common sense. Authority eclipsed reason. And Teresa stood in the background, clutching her phone with manic triumph, convinced her moment of heroic validation had arrived. Then the shift happened. A single SWAT officer got a clear look at Anna's face through a scope and froze. Recognition washed over him like a flash flood. His radio hissed to life with urgency. Orders reversed instantly. Stand down, that's Echo Spectre. Helmets lowered, weapons dropped, drones pulled back. The tension evaporated so abruptly it felt like the air itself exhaled. In that moment, the entire street witnessed the collision of two worlds. One built on delusion, paranoia, and petty authority. The other built on real power, earned through sacrifice, intelligence, and service. And as officers apologized to Anna, with a reverence usually reserved for decorated heroes, the truth became undeniable. Cypress Hollow hadn't been under threat from an outsider. It had been under siege from within, by the very woman who believed she was protecting it.
Teresa Blanchard had always seen herself as more than an HOA president. To her, the title wasn't a volunteer position meant to coordinate landscaping schedules and holiday decorations. It was a throne, a mandate, a license to micromanage every living soul within Cypress Hollow's walls. She wasn't elected so much as tolerated, the way one tolerates a loud alarm clock. Annoying, intrusive, but easier to let ring than to deal with directly. For years, she operated unchecked, armed with clipboards, color-coded spreadsheets, and a disturbing sense of self-importance that grew every time someone complied out of exhaustion rather than respect. But the day Anna Holbrook stepped onto Teresa's radar was the day this suburban dictatorship began to crumble. For months, Teresa's obsession bloomed into something far darker than strict rule enforcement. She wasn't satisfied with warnings and citations. She needed surveillance, control, absolute knowledge of every resident's movements. Her house slowly transformed into a command center, walls lined with printed schedules, maps, photos taken without permission, and files labeled like she was running a counterintelligence operation rather than an HOA committee. Some neighbors joked behind her back that she was one clipboard away from declaring martial law. What they didn't realize was how close that joke was to truth. Teresa saw herself as a guardian of order, a protector of the community from imagined threats, but she increasingly became the source of those threats. Her fabricated accusations, illegal surveillance, and obsessive documentation crossed lines she pretended she didn't see. She wasn't keeping the neighborhood safe, she was terrorizing it. When she called 911 on Anna, her final attempt to assert dominance, she believed she was about to expose a dangerous intruder. Instead, she ended up exposing herself. As SWAT backed off, as officers apologized to Anna, and as the truth of her call unraveled, Teresa's face shifted from self-righteous triumph to stunned collapse. She tried to regain control, shouting for Anna's arrest, insisting she was the victim, claiming that everything she'd done was for the safety of Cypress Hollow. But the officers were no longer listening to her. They were questioning her. For the first time, Teresa felt the weight of real authority pressing back. Once the investigation began, her carefully constructed world of control imploded with catastrophic speed. The trail camera pointed at the Holbrook home, the hundreds of photos stored on her computer, the false reports filed under a fake HOA-affiliated email address, the photoshopped badges she used to intimidate contractors and delivery drivers, the dossiers she kept on residents, kids included. Each discovery peeled back another layer of her delusion. exposing her not as a protector, but as a stalker, a fraud, and a danger to the very people she claimed to safeguard. The HOA board, terrified of lawsuits and public scandal, abandoned her instantly. Emergency meetings were called. Words like liability, breach of duty, and insurance termination bounced around the room. The board members resigned one by one, desperately trying to distance themselves from the disaster. Teresa was removed, banned, isolated. The self-made dictator had been dethroned in record time. And then came the legal consequences. Charges for harassment, charges for impersonating a federal officer, charges for false reporting, even charges for unauthorized drone use. In court, she tried to defend herself with the same delusional rhetoric. She was protecting the neighborhood. She was misunderstood. She was the only one who cared. But the judge saw through her immediately. 6 months in county jail, a fine, mandatory counseling, a stern lecture delivered while her face twisted in disbelief. The final moment of her downfall came when she shrieked, "This is all because she wouldn't show her ID," as the bailiff escorted her in handcuffs. But everyone in the courtroom knew the truth. This wasn't about an ID. This was about power, misused, abused, and ultimately stripped away. It was the spectacular collapse of a self-appointed ruler who believed a clipboard made her queen.